Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start with the story where our OP was cheated by his employer, but ended up squeezing him for 2 times what he owed me a couple of years later. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Pay me now or... So I was a general-purpose computer tech back in the Wild West days of computing. I worked for a large computer chain store and met lots of really nice people and did my best to help them make their systems do everything the salesman had promised it would do. One of these customers was a guy, CD, that ran what I call a fringe business called a buyer's group that basically provided his clients a discount with a number of large medically related provider companies. The providers offered these discounts because CD paid them immediately and then collected from his clients, pocketing a portion of the discounts. Legit, but I'm not a big fan of debt shuffling business. CD had hired a contract programmer that I'd recommended to set up an accounting system for his operation. She did a great job on the design and it worked well, but for some reason she refused to continue to work with him. I'd find out why later. CD contacted me and asked me to do some mods on his system. I figured it was because the contract programmer was too expensive, so I thought money and did a few small jobs for him and was paid reasonably promptly. Fast forward a couple years and CD wants some pretty major changes. I was in a different job and had some vacation coming, so I agreed to do it for a flat rate of about $1,000. Pretty good money for back then. Vacation comes, work complete, no payment. Arguments about problems with my work, but no request to fix them. Oh well, new GF was keeping me pretty busy. I've got better things to occupy my mind. A couple years later, I'm still doing consulting side gigs. This one is with Dr. Huge Money that's setting up an insurance company and wants some GIS crunching done. I did a bang-up job for him. Just as I was about to leave, I heard him mention an appointment with my old friend CD, who is going to be part of this venture. I gave him my best, oh man bro face and said, well, I hope you have better luck collecting from him than I did. Doc drills me for details. I oblige, except the price grew to $2,000. The very next day, I get a call from CD saying, oh, everything you did was great. We just needed documentation on the project. Promised he'd get it as soon as I was paid. Received a check a few days later, cashed it at his bank. I justified the squeeze as interest and attorney's fees. Back then, I never put anything in writing. And our second story. Being stubborn and unreasonable is a good way to make your business fail with me. So I own a few residential properties. I used to maintain them myself, but I have a small business that needs my constant attention, so I hired a property management company to maintain the properties. Property management companies handle everything. Fix anything broken, screen the tenants before moving in, evict them if they don't pay rent, etc., while I just collect my rent money minus their little reasonable fee they take every month. When I chose this company, who I'll call SPM for Crappy Property Management Company, they seem to be a very good company. Local, been established for a while, nice people, etc. I needed help marketing my properties and getting good tenants moved in, so I chose them. While most of my properties were vacant at the time, I did have a few occupied and one tenant living in my higher-end condo property, and he was my favorite tenant. We'll call him FT. I screened him and approved him myself before I hired SPM. He was a very good tenant, and he rented from me for 3 years, which is a long time and a great thing for landlords. Paid rent on time, made repairs himself without deducting rent, didn't smoke, etc. I ended up getting to know him because he wanted to buy the condo and he was a great tenant, so we became very good friends. Once I hired SPM, I had to inform my existing tenants that everything from now on would be handled by SPM and that they would need to sign a new lease. All tenants complied and everything was pretty good for about a year, just collecting my money with no issue. However, my designated representative from SPM kept changing almost every 3 months, it seemed like, which I should have noticed. But I had a lot more properties at this point and ended up becoming one of SPM's favorite property owners because of some of the higher rent properties. They made more money with me. They always praised how they loved doing business with me. FT lost his job for a couple of months but still managed to pay rent. I really appreciated that because when a tenant moves out, it's pretty costly for me, especially with this property. Not many people in this area would easily qualify for this property, so you can imagine how glad I was to find this good tenant. Well, for the month of March, which is 2 months after FT gets a new job, FT's rent check for March bounces because of an issue with his bank's overdraft. The bank showed it went through for a couple of days before it was returned. FT has never had any sort of trouble paying rent whatsoever. My payment from SPM included FT's payment, so both me and FT had no idea of this issue until SPM notifies him of the issue about a week after the check itself bounces. So in total, he was about half a month since FT dropped off his payment. Rent for April was about to be due, so he's just now being notified about the bounced check. The check that SPM waited a week to deposit and waited another week to call FT and let him know the check bounced. So you can imagine that it's pretty hard for FT to suddenly come up with the money to pay rent and pay next month's rent. Sure enough, he can't, which I'm understanding about at first. How does SPM handle this situation? They give him only 24 hours to pay the rent in certified funds, or they would file a worthless check complaint with the state attorney's office. Where I live, a worthless check would have been a felony charge that my tenant would be facing and could face prison time if convicted. FT tried to do whatever he could to get SPM to work with him so he could get a little extra time to come up with the money, but they wouldn't budge at all. You committed a felony. This is policy and we have to report it. Come up with the money by tomorrow or we file charges. First of all, I know the laws. SPM should have started the eviction process like they were supposed to, which would have given FT a few days to come up with the money. A bounced check is still unpaid rent, so they should have followed this procedure. The section lease that states the return check policy says nothing about them filing criminal charges. So I'm completely unaware of all this until SPM calls me and says FT is moving out because his lease was up, so he wasn't renewing. So I call FT to wish him the best and thank him for his long tenancy. He tells me everything SPM decided to pull as I described above. This gets me pretty mad. At the same time, I'm confused why FT didn't just call me in the first place, so I call my contact at SPM and get transferred to SPM B accountant. The conversation goes like this. Me, in a distressed tone. Okay, what the hell? This is a good paying tenant I've had for 3 years and never had a single problem with until now. Why are you threatening criminal charges? B, in a B tone of voice, a worthless check is a felony. He committed a felony. This is our policy, sorry. No, you need to follow the eviction process and give him the standard 3 days to cure the unpaid rent. It's his right. He has someone that's going to loan him the money in a few days. Doesn't matter. The check bounced. It is a felony. Like I'm some effing moron. It's our policy and we will prosecute if he doesn't pay by tomorrow. Now I'm pretty furious. Let me effing tell you something. This sounds like extortion. If you file that effing charge, you will have a problem with me. I'm not losing a perfectly good tenant who fell on hard times over this crap. Don't curse at me. I will not be cursed at. We're filing the charges if there's no payment tomorrow. I tell her some more explicit words and hang up. So now I'm playing the waiting game. FT is so distraught he decided to move in with his parents with plans to forfeit his security deposit to repay SPM, which I'm fine with because SPM already mistakenly paid me and he technically owed them at this point. April comes around and I notice that my rent payment had a deduction from what they mistakenly paid me, so SPM has their money back and now I'm the one that's out $2,200. So I now email SPM to see what's going on, reminding them they need to forfeit FT's entire security deposit to reimburse me for the lost rent. SPM then tells me over email that the security deposit is FT's money and they have to give it back to him only. Total bullcrap. So I'll be paid when they get the money from the state attorney as they've kept their word on filing the charges. I ask why and how they were going to collect the money to refresh my memory. So SPM's rep explains to me over the email the whole thing. How he didn't come up with the money in 24 hours, felony, our policy, etc. So now I have everything documented in email of how they used extortion on my tenant instead of following the eviction process. I don't argue, even though I'm pretty furious finding out they still filed the charge on who's now my friend when I was willing to take the loss. So now I'm extremely furious and I go down to their office unannounced. I encountered Accounting B again, told her I wanted to talk with the owner. Her response was, "If this is about the whole situation with FT, you're not seeing him." I told her that's going to be a problem because I'm pulling all my properties away and switching property management companies, so I needed the keys and paperwork. Eyes widened, and her voice went from B to shaky. Now the owner sits down with me and desperately tries to get me to reconsider. I highlighted what they did was unacceptable, against state laws, and they needed to drop the charges. He wouldn't do it, saying he can't because it's policy again. Told him that's bullcrap because he doesn't technically owe them money, he owes me, and I'm taking the loss. Still nothing. So I take my keys to all the properties and cut all ties. But they didn't drop it for whatever reason. So now I'm on fire. I wanted to see what other trouble they've been in, so I ended up doing a little research in the county court records. Sure enough, SPM has been sued for crappy management before and had to pay $20,000 to an apartment complex that sued them. So I contacted my lawyer who helped me when I bought my first investment property, explained everything that happened, and we ended up having a meeting. We ended up taking SPM to court and filing a Board of Realtors complaint, notifying the board that SPM was being sued for their actions. To add the cherry on top, we requested the same judge who oversaw SPM's previous lawsuit. Lo and behold, there's the same judge on the stand, and he isn't pleased to see the owner's face again. They were found guilty of extortion, violating tenant rights, and in violation of many real estate laws. Judge rules the following. Worthless check charge against FT dismissed. $15,000 in damages to FT for extortion, $10,000 to me for damages and attorney fees, $8,000 court fine for extortion, business licensing and real estate license revoked. So now SPM is done, and the owner can no longer practice real estate, all because they decided to be stubborn and not be ethical. To my understanding, there's another criminal case for extortion against the owner, but I haven't kept tabs on that. The office they were once in is now vacant and being offered for rent by another realtor. FT bought a house. He may be involved with the other case, but not sure. I sold a good amount of my properties and hired an actual person to manage the properties I have remaining. Hey guys, thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one.